in studio making the wonderful venture from Manistee, Michigan, from Frankfort. Frankfort girls softball coach Mike Thompson. Mike, happy Thursday. How are we feeling today?
Hey, we're feeling good. We had a good week of practice so far. Looking forward to a really fun season. Like to get outside and not have this rain and the cold weather, but it is what it is.
Absolutely. So, losing only one senior from last year, but it was a big piece, obviously, in Taylor Myers. Bring everybody back, add six new pieces. I mean, just how are you excited for this group right now?
Well, there's no doubt that you can't replace a girl like Taylor. What she brought to us athletically just really pales in comparison to what she brought to us as a leader. She was the voice of character, of confidence, in being the encourager, and she left a huge void for us in the leadership department. The good news is that the girls respected her and trusted her so much that they know what they need to do. And they want to make sure that they honor Taylor's legacy by learning from her. And so they learned a lot about what it takes to win. They learned a lot about what good teammates look like. They learned what good commitment is. And so that's going to be really good. Now, the better news, I suppose, is that her little sister Sage is now on board. So Sage is ready to go. She's extremely determined, and she's going to get a lot of innings even as a freshman. And looking forward to that. So the 6 new pieces, we're going to have to figure out. And so most of the positions that we have are mostly returning people. So competition has been good. Everybody wants to play. Everybody's going to have a role. One of the things that we do in our program is that our role players, so if we have 14 kids and able to start 9 or 10 at a time, these other 5 kids or whatever are going to have roles, whether it be as practice players, as charting pitches or charting hitters. And one of the things that we really like to do in our program is celebrate those roles. And so everybody feels a part of it. Everybody feels that they're making the team better and having us have success. So far with 4 days of practice, it's a matter of trying to do one thing at a time and see where we are in June. Usually the kids have the roles figured out by usually about the middle of April. And so we're looking really forward to this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Sage is really excited. She's been a manager for a couple of years, and now she finally gets her chance. And Taylor will be back from Detroit Mercy sometime in May, and she's going to come back and help us and encourage Sage, and it's going to be fun.
So from the circle so far, she's I know she hasn't thrown anything in a game yet, but what do you see out of Sage in the circle, and is there any similarities for Taylor, or is she kind of her own piece?
That's a great question. Taylor and Sage are different kids. Sage has got a little bit of Haley Myers in her from a few years ago, and all of it's great. Sage is more of a spin pitcher than Taylor really was. Taylor was fantastic with location and change of speed. Sage is going to be that kid, but right now Sage has got more spin than Taylor did at such a young age. And again, Taylor lost one of her seasons, of course, because of COVID, but so Sage is different. I mean, she spins the ball different than Taylor does, and she's gonna be great. She's gonna be fun.
Mike, I wanted to ask you, because you were mentioning in the program, right, you try your best to give everybody a role once you get beyond sort of that middle of the year when you feel like maybe you've carved out your lineup. And I wanted to, kind of get your sense of how important that is for every single kid to have a role in high school sports where playing time becomes so important for everybody.
Critical. I'm a firm believer in one of the reasons that some athletes quit sports is that they don't know what their role is. I see it all the time. I see it in other sports, it drives me crazy. And so what we try to do is we try to help them understand what their role is. I don't really ever get a whole lot of playing time questions. The questions that I help the kids direct themselves toward is, Coach, can you help me understand what my role is? And the crazy thing about that is that I say, yeah, we'll help you figure out what your role is. Understand, though, that your role may change over the course of the season, and you have to be ready for that moment. Cora Scott, from a few years ago, if you guys remember, was a really good example. Cora had a little bit of trouble when she was younger cracking the lineup. And so what she ended up doing is she ended up charting pitches for us, and it became a 3-way or 4-way dynamic between myself and Cora, who was feeding me information, and our pitcher and our catcher. And it was fantastic. And she accepted that role. She knew it was important, and we made a big deal out of it. Because, she's not playing on the field during a lot of the games. I think she might have had maybe 30 or 40 at-bats during the whole season. But what she does matters. The dugout mom matters. The kids that run bases in practice matters. The role players in her team, they matter. And as a coach, I find it extremely important for me to make sure that those roles get celebrated and that they get encouraged, and they know that they're helping the ship come into dock.
You mentioned those 6 newcomers. I want to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about who they are and what they're bringing to the table.
Okay, well, Jaden Joslin is the daughter of one of our players from a few years ago, and she's been waiting her chance. And she finally is going to get a chance to show her stuff, and we're really excited for Jaden. Ava Meyer is another freshman kid who, what I like about Ava is she's just so dang happy to be there. And she's such a quick learner, and you really love kids like that. You have kids like Mary Catherine McCrae, super smart and picks up things really quickly. You have a girl like Ava Stevenson, who is late to the ball game a little bit, and she's getting better every day. And then you have Darby O'Grady, who played on our junior high last year. And she's a lefty, and she's working hard, and she's trying, and she wants to crack the lineup. But she's also going to be one of those players who's going to be in one of those roles. She's going to understand what her role is, and we're going to get it figured out for her. And she's, again, a great team player. So it's going to be fun for us.
One player I want to talk to you about, you keep mentioning roles. Last year, I believe her role in the lineup and then also behind the plate was huge. That's Kinsey Stockdale. Back her senior year, one of the top catchers in the Northwest Conference last year. What excites you most about her this season, and where do you feel that role is going to be at for her?
Well, I don't think that Kinsey's really hit her peak yet. And so when she peaks, when she puts everything together, she had a fantastic junior year. She had, 12, 13, 14 home runs. She ends up being a first-team All-State catcher. And she gave up a total of 4, 5, 6 stolen bases total all of last year, and threw out 75% of her runners or something crazy like that. As a year older, a year stronger, a year more mature, developing her leadership skills, she can do some great things, and I hope that we get to that moment where she peaks.
Kind of sticking with Stockdale and her position, being that, she's a catcher. I don't think I've asked any of our baseball or softball coaches this yet, but how important is it, or how nice is it as a coach to have an upperclassman as your backstop?
Well, and it's even better when she's working with a freshman pitcher, because Kinsey's been catching for a long time, and she caught Taylor for a whole bunch of years, and so she knows how to handle pitchers. Interesting thing that what we do with Kinsey is that I was a college catcher, and so that was my thing. So, and I get it, and I know what it's like. And so one of the things that, Kinsey and I have talked about is that, okay, so is that your pitcher or is she your catcher? And that verbiage is important. It's like, coach, that's my pitcher. She belongs to me. And so Kinsey's really good at developing that relationship that, okay, that was a great pitch, but this is where it needs to be. Or that one was, okay, that's got too much of the plate, and that one needs to be on the corner, not down the middle. So she's great when, working with the young pitchers. And Sage has never pitched a varsity game before. And so far she's been really good at encouraging Sage and, giving her the wisdom that, Kinsey has developed over the last couple of years. So that is really, giving Sage a senior catcher is a wonderful benefit. And I don't know if Sage is going to have a senior catcher again. So having a senior catcher like Kinsey with all this experience And Kinsey's been catching since she was a little girl, so that's going to help Sage a lot.
From a goals and expectations standpoint, being that, you guys are coming off some success last year, you only graduate the one player, then you bring 6 newcomers. Just where does this team stand right now, and I guess what are you expecting of them?
Well, every year you have to learn how to win. This happens with every team. And in truth, as you look around at high school teams, some teams never learn that. So even with teams and successful programs like we have, every team needs to learn how to win. What is it going to take in order for us to be successful? Even though we've had a really good program over the last 45 years, we started last year at 1-11 and really struggled. But again, it's the same thing, is that team took a little bit longer to learn how to win. What is it going to take? What kind of practices do you have to have? What is it going to take base running wise? What's it going to take pitching wise? So every team needs to learn how to do that. As far as the expectations and that sort of thing goes, we are really fortunate to be able to take our team to Florida for spring training. We're really, really lucky. A lot of schools aren't allowed to or doesn't want to raise the money to do it and whatever, so we're really lucky. One of the things that we do while we're in Florida, since we have almost all the girls there, is we set our team standards. We do team standards for academics, social life, games, and practices. They're all mutually negotiated by all the players. They're decided on by them. When we're all done, the kids have to sign them, so that's their commitment. But we also do, to answer your question about goals. So while we're there, we do 2 kinds of goals. First of all, we do the outcome goals. In other words, what do you want? And usually we narrow it down to about 5, 6, or 7. So for example, do you want to, like for example, win the Northwest Conference, or beat Kingsley, or have a 3.5 GPA, or those kinds of things, those kind of outcomes, win your district or win your region. So we'll decide on those things. Then when we're done with that, 5 or 6 goals, we will go through the process goals. So what are we going to have to do in order to beat Kingsley, to win the Northwest Conference, to have that 3.5 GPA? What are we going to have to do? And so then it becomes this brainstorming list. Okay, well, usually what comes out is we need to have quality practices. We need to have everybody in attendance all the time. We need to stay on top of our homework. And so the girls all brainstorm, okay, what are we going to have to do in order to, reach our goals? The idea behind it is when you get into a car. Why would you get into your car if you don't know where you're going? So this is the purpose of that. So the reason for doing the outcome goals like that is for us, when we get in the car, we know why we're here. And it's really easy to, when kids have bad days or bad games or whatever, to point to our goals. So this is why we're here. And this is why you need to have a good attitude at practice. Or this is why you need to take a couple extra swings. Or this is why you need to do your homework. Because this is what we agreed to do. And so expectations, goals, those standards, that's really kind of what drives us. When we, about halfway through our season last year, when we were 1-11 and just got our butts kicked by Kingsley, we all sat down and said, okay, this is not working for us. So we need to set a new goal. And we didn't have any chance of winning the league at that point. And so the goal then became, in the first week of May, it was to beat Onekma in the district. And everything that we did, practices, our non-conference games, our conference games, everything was centered around, this is now our goal. It's 5 weeks away, but everything that we do is we got to get ready to beat them. And one of the goals that I have for myself is to be playing the best softball in June. Because April is April, and preseason is what it is, non-conference is what it is. But we want to be playing our best in June. And there is no doubt, at least in my mind, that when we got to the district game against Onekma, that we were playing our best ball. And we had that game won 3 or 4 times, and it just didn't work out that way. But, yeah.
I do want to ask about that 13-inning gem in a little bit here, but also, you mentioned a lot of good things about the philosophies of your program, like all the goal setting. Where does that come from?
Well, it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of it. There was a moment about 8 or 10 years ago in my program that something didn't go well amongst the team, and I had to dismiss some players. And that summer, after that, I asked myself, okay, why did that happen? And here's what I discovered. I discovered that it wasn't the player's fault. It was my fault because I had not created a culture of accountability within my program. Up until that point, everything, like all the goals and rules, and I got 6 pages of stuff that you hand out on day number 1, and it's got all these rules and phone numbers and times and consequences and all this stuff. But I realized that there's a better way. And so that summer, I started digging deeper into the Jeff Jansen stuff, and I read some books by John Wooden, and all the other these coaches, and did some research. I read Pat Summitt's book. I read Bill Walsh's book, and I said, okay, so I'm not doing this right. And the truth was we were still winning, but I still knew that I wasn't doing things right because I had dismissed some kids. So then that's what began this kind of journey into creating a culture of accountability within the program. And now everything's not dictated by me anymore. The kids now do a really good job at holding each other accountable because what we've done is we've invested the time to get them to do their own standards of behavior and sign their own names to it. So now they're holding each other accountable. So what it does for me now is I can game plan for beating Kingsley or Benzie or Glen Lake or whatever it is to be, and I'm working on my practice plans. When we have issues at practice or off the field or whatever, usually our great leaders are the ones who handle that. So they take the little brush fires and do a really good job of putting them out before they become raging infernos. And I had a raging inferno 8-10 years ago on that team that didn't go very well. So Jeff Jansen is a really good example of the stuff that I dug deep into. I actually work for him. I have my own Great Lakes Sports Leadership, my old shameless plug. So I travel the state doing these leadership summits with coaches and developing leaders to help them in their programs. So a lot of Jeff's stuff I use, but I've also learned from a lot of different people. Jamie Beckler is a fantastic leadership specialist. Talked to him a few times, and it's that kind of thing. But the point was that I wasn't growing as a coach. But of course I thought I knew everything. What I learned was I didn't. So after I started to growing again is when all this has kind of manifested itself.
You also mentioned the fact the Florida trip. Where exactly do you guys go, and how did that tradition start in the first place?
Well, that goes all the way back to Sue Harris. So Sue Harris took the girls to Gulf Shores for a whole bunch of years. And so when I took over in 2003, I was at the coaches clinic in Lansing, and somebody was giving a presentation about Florida trips and going to South Carolina and Gulf Shores and all this stuff. And I looked at Coach Mallory and went, oh yeah, let's do that. And so when we got back from that clinic, I ran into Becky Prattley, who's Becky Miller, who's our volleyball coach, of course. And I asked her, so, okay, you guys Sue took you guys to Gulf Shores. She goes, yes. It was amazing. And I said, well, Jeff and I are talking about, doing a trip, something like that. As I'm a new softball coach. And I asked Becky, well, what'd you think of it? I mean, how'd it go? And she goes, Mike, you don't understand that was like the best time I ever had in high school was on the trips that she took with their softball team to Gulf Shores. So that tradition has kind of continued. So what we do now is we've kind of done everything. We've rented like hotel rooms. We did Disney a couple of years because they have a beautiful complex there at the ESPN zone. We did that a couple times, but it's super expensive for us. And so what we really kind of settled into now is we settled into renting a house. And my brother, older brother, lives in Jacksonville, Florida. And so when we first started doing this, says, why don't you come down here to St. Augustine? Because there's a really nice place called Davis Park. They won't charge you anything. And St. Augustine is incredibly historic. I mean, it's built in 1565. And the Castillo de San Marcos is there. It's an old Spanish fort. And then there's the lighthouse and the Maritime Museum, which we always go to. And so we go to St. Augustine. We actually stay in Ponte Vedra, which is a little bit north of there. And we rent a house on the ocean. We stick 15, 16 people in there. And we practice up in Davis Park, which is about 20 minutes north of there. And then we practice from about 8:30 to about 12:30 or 1. We come back to the house and have lunch, and then usually they get the afternoon off. Sometimes they'll just walk out the back door to the beach. If it's kind of a cruddy day, sometimes we might go downtown or go to the mall or go to the lighthouse or the Castillo or whatever. We always come back and have dinner, and then we always have some team activity at night. Usually it's any form of team building, the standards and the process goals that we were talking about earlier. Movie night, there's always a euchre game going on somewhere. They discovered a new game a few years ago called Peanuts that one of my assistant coaches brought from wherever she found it. And it's kind of a modified version of euchre. We wear the kids out, the truth be told. But what that does for us is that we get essentially 20 hours of practice that most teams in Northern Michigan don't get. So while y'all are up here throwing snowballs the last week of March,
Yep.
We're down on real dirt, on real grass, under the real sun. It's a tremendous trip to put together. It takes about a year to schedule all this stuff. It's a tremendous thing to fundraise, and we have wonderful people in Benzie County that are incredibly supportive of the things that we do. And so they have been really helpful financially to make this trip happen for the kids, because they know how valuable it is to them, and educational too. It's really cool walking down, the downtown on St. George Street in St. Augustine with the roads that are about 10 feet wide, because there are no cars in 1565, and it used to be a walled city. And so it's really fun to go over to the Maritime Museum, because they're active in their archaeology. So whatever they're working and pulling out of the ocean at the time, they have at the Maritime Museum. And to go up into the lighthouse, it's 219 steps. It's 170 feet, and allegedly haunted. That's always a hoot. Again, the Castillo, which is in downtown St. Augustine, has got a very storied past. It's just it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but we think that the work is worth what we get out of it in return. So usually when we come back from Florida, now this still wasn't the case last year, but usually when we come back, we're about 3 weeks ahead of everybody. Hitting the ball, especially running the bases, because that's something you really can't do when there's snow on the ground. And so we actually kind of scrimmage ourselves at the end of every practice, and them getting to know how to run the bases really well. That's one thing that most people say that when they watch us the first time after we get back, is how we run the bases, because we've been doing it for a week, and usually we crush the ball pretty well. Again, last year was kind of not so much, but usually, because we're just ahead of everybody, and we're just really lucky to be able to do it.
I know we hit on Kinsey earlier, but you still bring back more the heart of the lineup with Emma Mantle, Emma McKenzie. I don't want to talk about Colts and everything, but to bring back that 3, 4, 5 punch into your lineup, how valuable is that? Well,
I mean, here's what I always say, is that I always say that the teams that are really going to decide your season are your 6, 7, 8 hitters. The Evelyn Van Tolls, the Emma McKenzies, the Kylie Mannings, those kids are going to hit. Okay? There's no doubt about that. The kids who are going to make or break your season are the Sammy Testers, the Ellie Tisworths, and those kids. Those are the ones that are going to make or break your seasons. It's good to have those kids back, because they know another year of experience. But it's going to be those kids at the bottom that are going to really make the difference.
I wanted to kind of take it back to where you said you've sort of been doing this culture of accountability for about 10 years. And you said your first year was 2003, which puts you almost at 20 years, if I'm not wrong.
This would be 21.
This would be 21? Okay. And, I just want to ask you, how have you seen the program change in the last 10 years since you started doing those things? Because you said you were always winning. Yeah. So I guess what have the biggest changes been within the program since those?
Okay, so the best way I can describe it is 2019. In 2019, we continued to we really started doing the standards of behavior and the process goals and this sort of stuff. 2015, 16, when and again, it took me a little while to make sure that to modify it, to get it right, and it's still evolving now, and it will probably evolve, continue to evolve. But 2019 was the year that, boy, we had it down. We had great leadership, great culture, great parents, great coaching. Everything just aligned perfectly for us. So what happened in 2019, for example, is that in 2019, this is my little humble brag here. So in 2019, we had no missed practices. So you're talking, 15 kids, 40 practices, not a single one missed. We had no suspensions or dismissals for any reason. We had nobody's end up in detention at any point. We had the highest GPA not only in Division 4, but in the entire state of Michigan, more than 500 schools. It was a 3.9 something GPA, so we actually won a state championship in academics. More than 500 schools. Additionally, during the course of that year, and we continued to win, but I also had 0 player, coach, parent meetings. And, you guys talk to a lot of coaches, and one thing that coaches hate the most is player, coach, parent meetings. So the kids were policing themselves, and you can see that it just bred success. Everybody was a part of it. We were all on the same page. And when you bring a group of kids together from so varied an environment, we have kids that live at the country club, but we also have kids that live in dirt floors and everything in between. And if you can take all of those mixtures of personalities and lifestyles and histories and whatever and blend it together, man, you're doing something good. And that's what really happened in 2019. Everybody on the same page, and that was a machine. And everything just went so smoothly, and it was so fun to be a part of. One of the things that you guys kind of are getting at here is that it makes coaching so much more fun, because you're not putting little brush fires out all the time. And this is what some of the things that drive coaches out of the industry, is that they're continuing to put fires out all the time. And now, I haven't completely eliminated them, because that's impossible. But what we have done is we have minimized them. And a lot of that stems from the girls just holding themselves accountable to what they agreed to do. And that's been really helpful.
I know I kind of alluded about the 13-inning game against the National last year.
You really want to go back to that some more, don't you?
I just want to ask one question about this, and that's it. With having such little turnover as you do, and after seeing what the district kind of draws, who's going to be in what, knowing that A, you get them a conference play again this year, and B, you have to get them to districts. With the players back, is that game not left the back of their mind, or do you have to reset switch like, hey, that happened, we can't do anything about it, it's a new season?
The girls are well aware of the fact that we just fell a little bit short last spring. They know. But I don't get a sense that it's something that they dwell on. I think that really the sense that they get, all these kids who are returning, really understand that we were playing the best ball we could. And, you look at our roster, and they're fantastic kids. But it's not Traverse City Central. They're not the talent level there. Nothing personal. That's just not. It's not like the Gaylord kids. The Gaylord kids are stacked full of talent. We have a bunch of wonderful kids, but it's different than some of these bigger schools. There is no doubt that the kids feel that we maximized what we did. We maximized our talent, and they know it. They know how important that culture and leadership is. Those kids know that we're going to win more games because of the leadership and the culture we create. We probably are going to win more games than we should, just based on talent alone. And so right now they do not have Onekama circled on their things. It's going to be a different team. I mean, Sophie's down at Ferris doing her thing, and I hope she does fantastic. And the kids know it. It's going to be a different team. Well, some of them have, I want to go ahead and beat Onekama, who's lost to them in 13 innings last year in the district final. Yeah, but I don't really get the sense right now that it's something that, we got to focus right now so we can beat Onekama. I don't really get that sense right now. I get the sense right now that our kids right now are really focused on getting better, that they're really focused on serving each other. They're really focused on just being them. And I don't really get the sense right now that they have any real team circled on their schedule. Gotcha. At least as of right now. I don't get that sense.
Gotcha. All right, that's the last time I ever asked about that game. Perfect. Easy enough.
Yeah, I did want to ask you about, speaking of, I guess, individual games, even though you said that there's, nobody circled technically, but just how exciting it is for you over the years and maybe for the girls to clash with Abenzie Central when that game does come up and what that rivalry is like with the softball program, just because I don't think I've had the pleasure of asking you that yet.
Yeah, again, early in the year like this is not something that they have circled, but once we get into our conference season, I'm sure that it's going to be something. There's only 2 schools in our county, and you want bragging rights, and you can have that all winter long if that's what you desire. I know Scott really well. I mean, he's an excellent coach over there. He will have his kids prepared, and I will too. I mean, we don't get too excited about, get overexcited to the point where it interferes with what we need to do. So we'll play our game. Yeah, it's Benzie County, it's a rivalry and so on, but and they'll want to win for sure. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Okay.
I know every year every team is different, whether it be chemistry, personalities, like you mentioned. Like in 2019, it was just a melting pot of just amazing kids. But at least with this group, how do you feel it's going to be different? I mean, I know we're only day 4 in the season, but how do you feel this is going to be different as opposed to teams past?
Okay, well, this group is just simply got to kind of find itself. I think that we at the beginning of last year, it was a lot of different personalities. So I look at this as kind of a 2-year gig now. So in this second year, you can kind of already tell that we're way ahead of where we were certainly at this point last year. What's really kind of refreshing is I also get the sense now that the 2021 was really, really rough because of post-pandemic. And that was difficult. But here we are now in 2022 and 2023, where these kids, they know each other a lot better now, and they're meshing together a lot better now, and they're playing for each other, which took, again, the month of April last year was miserable because we just hadn't figured that out yet. I think this team has already got a good sense of what it's going to take to win. Yeah.
All right. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time and joining us, and best luck in the season.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for your coverage, and let's have a great season.